Some voices only come around once in a generation. Raw. Soulful. Completely, unmistakably human. Amy Winehouse had that voice. But behind every breathtaking note was a woman at war with the world, with the spotlight, and most painfully, with herself. This is the story of a girl from North London who became one of the greatest musical talents of her era, and the heartbreaking truth of what that cost her. This is Behind the Name. September 14, 1983. Enfield, North London. Amy Jade Winehouse is born into a Jewish family that breathes music. Her father, Mitch, sang Frank Sinatra songs around the house constantly. Her grandmother, Cynthia, had dated the saxophonist Ronnie Scott. Music wasn't just background noise in the Winehouse home, it was the language they spoke. From the moment Amy could talk, she was performing loud. Theatrical, fearless. By 9 years old, she was already mimicking jazz and blues singers with an accuracy that made adults stop and stare. Not in a cute kid kind of way, in a "what is this" kind of way. She attended the Sophia Young Theatre School in London, one of the most prestigious performing arts schools in the country. But Amy was never one for rules. She was expelled. Twice from different schools. Too rebellious. Too much personality for the system to contain. But you can't contain a voice like that. At 16, she picked up a guitar. Started writing her own songs. And something clicked. The girl who could sit still in a classroom had found her classroom, and it had no walls. 2003. Amy is just 19 years old. Her debut album, Frank, drops, and the British music world does a double take. Named as a nod to her idol Frank Sinatra, the album was unapologetically honest. Jazz-influenced, lyrically sharp, and emotionally mature in a way that felt almost uncomfortable coming from someone so young. Songs like Stronger Than Me and In My Bed weren't pop confections. They were conversations, messy, complicated. Real. The critics took notice. Frank was nominated for the Mercury Prize. Sales climbed. Interviews poured in. But Amy was conflicted. She'd made the album in her late teens, pouring her actual diary onto record, and now strangers were dissecting it. She was funny in interviews, witty, sharp-tongued. She wore her heart on her sleeve and a smirk on her face, but fame, even early fame, was already pressing against something fragile inside her. 2006, Amy meets Blake Fielder Civil, a relationship that her closest friends would later describe as the most destructive force in her life, and yet the one that produced the most extraordinary music she ever made. Their relationship was turbulent from the start. Passionate, chaotic, painful. Blake left her for another woman. Amy fell apart. And from that devastation came Back to Black. Recorded with legendary producer Mark Ronson and the Dub Kings, Back to Black was a masterpiece. A marriage of 1960s girl group soul with brutally modern heartbreak. Rehab. Valerie. You Know I'm No Good. Tears Dry on Their Own. And the title track, Back to Black, one of the most emotionally devastating songs in modern music history. The world didn't just notice. The world stopped. 5 Grammy Awards in 2008. The first British woman to win 5 Grammys in a single night. The album went on to sell over 20 million copies worldwide. Amy stood on that Grammy stage in her signature beehive, her winged eyeliner, her vintage dress, and she looked like she'd walked out of another era entirely. Because, in many ways, she had. But here's the thing about Rehab, the most famous song on that album. It wasn't fiction. Amy had been struggling with alcohol and substance abuse for years. Her label wanted her to go to rehab. Her father thought she was fine. And Amy, being Amy, turned the whole complicated mess into a 3-minute anthem. They tried to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no. The world sang along, laughed. celebrated the defiance. But behind the chorus was a woman who was genuinely drowning. She married Blake Fielder Civil in 2007. The marriage accelerated her decline. Paparazzi photos showed her looking skeletal, disheveled, lost. Concerts were cancelled. Performances were slurred and erratic. In 2008, she was diagnosed with emphysema. She was 24 years old. The tabloids were brutal. They photographed her worst moments and put them on front pages. The public consumed her pain like entertainment. And Amy, brilliant, bruised Amy, kept trying to find solid ground that kept crumbling beneath her feet. By 2009, she and Blake had divorced. She retreated to St. Lucia for a while. Friends said she seemed better, lighter. She was working on new music, collaborating, smiling again. But addiction doesn't care about your comeback story. In 2011, she attempted a European comeback tour. The Belgrade concert was a disaster. She stumbled on stage, forgot lyrics, seemed completely detached from reality. The remaining dates were cancelled. Those who knew her said she was embarrassed, devastated. She hated letting people down. She went home to her house in Camden, North London. On July 23, 2011, Amy Winehouse was found unresponsive in her bedroom. She was 27 years old. The cause of death, accidental alcohol poisoning. The world that had spent years watching her unravel fell completely silent. Amy Winehouse joined what is grimly called the 27 Club, the list of iconic musicians who died at 27. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain. But Amy's story isn't just a tragedy, and it would be a disservice to her to leave it there. Her voice changed music. Back to Black is consistently ranked among the greatest albums ever recorded. It helped spark a revival of soul and R&B that shake the sound of an entire decade. Adele has cited her as a direct influence. Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars, Sam Smith, countless others. In 2015, a documentary simply titled Amy, directed by Asif Kapadia, gave the world a fuller, more honest picture of who she was. Not the tabloid punchline, not the train wreck, but the funny, tender, fiercely loyal, deeply gifted woman underneath all of it. It won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. Her father, Mitch Winehouse, established the Amy Winehouse Foundation, dedicated to helping young people struggling with addiction and mental health challenges. Her spirit's still doing work in the world. Amy Winehouse didn't just sing songs. She confessed them. She handed you her pain and somehow made it beautiful. And maybe that's the hardest part of her story. The world got the music, but it took everything she had to give it. She deserved more time, more help, more gentleness from a world that preferred the spectacle to the person. But what she left behind, that voice, those songs, that feeling she could put into 3 minutes of music, that doesn't go anywhere. Behind every great name is a human story. And Amy's story reminds us genius is fragile. Talent is not armor. And sometimes the people who feel everything the most deeply are the ones we forget to check on. Rest easy, Amy. The name lives on.